Let's get scratching.
Hello and welcome to 2025. My name is Adam Latour, and this is the KashCast, an interview-focused podcast that talks to people across and beyond the animation and entertainment spheres about their life, works, and hobbies. With me, I have Caelum Beckinsale, right?
Yes, Caelum Beckinsale. Hello.
Perfect. So, Caelum is a 3D animator and visual effects artist hailing from Australia and has worked on various animated projects. And in his spare time, also does media analysis on YouTube with a specific focus on Sonic and Jurassic Park. I'll pass the mic to Caelum so he can elaborate on himself and what he does.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. So I have definitely background in animation, but at the moment I'm really focusing on, over the past few years, I've been doing lighting in Unreal Engine. So starting in Unreal Engine 4 and now in Unreal 5, and a little bit of pipeline coding stuff as well. So sort of learning how to make tools to make workflows faster inside Unreal. So that's through Python coding and through Unreal Zone blueprint system.
Wow. So personally, I've never really delved into 3D animation specifically, but the fact that you are creative in your own right that also is able to do all these advanced coding stuff. From my perspective, you're basically dual wielding.
Yeah, kind of. It wasn't something I thought I would ever get into. So in high school, I had a computer sort of general class that had a bit of programming stuff. I think we did JavaScript and things, and I never really understood any of it. I wasn't very good at it. I got by, but I didn't quite fundamentally get it. And I think part of that is I also wasn't a big fan of maths in high school. I did decent, I did well for the most part, but there'd always be those particular, formulas or processes where I didn't fundamentally understand them very well, and that would really turn me off. But then overcoming that hurdle with coding made me really get it, and I wouldn't consider myself a master of coding in general, but the things I've had to make and do, I think I've done pretty well at, and I've gotten a lot better at it over the years, because it started just out of necessity. So it was my first day at my first full-time job doing Unreal stuff, and our team was basically me and one other person doing everything in Unreal for the show. And
wow.
And he said, all right, we've got first episode coming up. We need 100 shots, made inside of Unreal to match up with the shots we're getting from animation out of Maya, another software. And so right now, you're just going to have to sit there and manually make every folder, shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, and then make all of the files inside of it. And immediately we were both like, well, this feels like something that we could just program something to do for us.
Yeah.
And so, just sort of through necessity over time, basically in between making the show, I was learning how to program stuff through blueprints. And the advantage with Unreal's blueprint system compared to traditional coding is that it's a visual scripting. So it's all with nodes, so big blocks that you connect little wires to. So people that do material work and Blender and Maya will be familiar with that as well. It just visualizes the process, which made it so much easier for me to figure out. And then later on, I would learn how to do the same thing in Python as well.
Wow. No, that's definitely a lot more impressive compared to stuff I've been doing. For context sake, well, I guess to start for my origin, for lack of better expression, when I was in high school, I was always a little bit of a techie, but for high school specifically, for me, we had different, they were basically majors, and the major that I was in, between graphic design, computer repair, and networking, I was in networking. So that's learning a bunch of IP address stuff, creating little LANs, even being able to make Ethernet cables, but kind of crashed and burned. Well, I mean, for high school, yeah, that that worked. I learned a lot, and I'm still proud of what I did. When I got into college, however, there wasn't like a square major I can just easily fit in to just continue more of that. So I ended up in information technology. And as someone who had not had any prior coding experience, having to do some of that definitely humbled me. I was not able to get into Java either. And it basically made me transfer colleges to a separate major, which is more adjacent to social work. But I still tinkered with computers in my spare time. And I never stopped loving animation. So, like, obviously not being in that same major, but still doing my own research is basically what led me at this point. And I've been at Titmouse for 2.5, maybe 3 years. So, which big deal for someone who did not go to college for this stuff. And like on the job, like I guess some of the more clerical stuff that I'm doing, actually, as I record this, like one of the final things that I do, there's a process, and of course, like feel free to jump in if any of this sounds familiar, because I'd love to, compare like our experiences.
Sure.
But on my end, there is a process called conforms, which basically I'm opening a storyboard from an episode that are normally broken into like 3 or 4 chunks. Sometimes they're broken into a specific chunk if there's like a musical number that has to be like boarded all on its own. So manually, we have like a lead sheet, which is basically for anyone who might not know in the audience, at least for our show, like everything's different. But it is a list. So it's like every scene individually, just like an Excel sheet, and just gives you the file names of like the assets that are being used for characters, backgrounds, props, etc., etc. And I just have to make text boxes while in Storyboard Pro to line it up to the first panel in each scene, export that as PDF, and often in like another session I'll have to add the dialogue as well. So from there I'd actually have to like double duty, look at the finished animatic that has been processed with the editors, have the script in yet another window, and then just like go through frame by frame to make sure things match up, type properly. Definitely not difficult work, but definitely tedious work.
Yeah, very tedious.
Definitely.
Yeah, that sounds kind of like what we would call like layout or editorial. So sort of layout, setting up the initial versions of a shot, like just doing the range of the shot, so how many frames, how many seconds it is, and then putting all the assets in that will be used by the animators, bringing in the audio, kind of setting everything up ahead of time so that downstream animation gets it and then lighting gets it. So for us, that's in Unreal. And yeah, sort of what you're talking about of having to know which assets go where, like that's kind of something I'm working on as well in regards to general pipeline, because we get things where animation is working in Maya, and then they're animating the characters and they export them out as an FBX file, which if anyone doesn't know, it's just a very standard 3D export file. So for us, that's a skeletal export. So it's a very small file size. It's just the bones moving around. And then we bring that animation into Unreal and apply it back onto the skeleton or the skeletal mesh in Unreal that matches the skeleton in that export. So the issue I always have to figure out is like making sure that those exports are being named properly, because no one wants to sit there and for every single shot manually drag over every file and say, okay, this is called character 1. Okay, let me find the character 1 we try to, all my tools are built to do all of that for us. So it will read in the file name, this is character 1, and then it will apply it to the character 1, skeleton inside Unreal. But then the problem is, we'll get something like, now we have character 1 variant 2.
Yes.
But like the tool doesn't necessarily know to distinguish that against the base one, because it's looking for the name character 1. And if it sees that, it doesn't necessarily see what comes after it. If it says, variation 1 or whatever. So now I'm like, all right, now we got to go back and like add, variant 1 onto like the original version so that the importers I've built can like distinguish it properly. So all that kind of stuff happens a lot.
I can imagine
knowing which asset are we meant to be using here, and same with environments as well. Like, you have different variations of the same room, like room clean, room dirty, for example, and it's like we need to have that information available somewhere so that the tools can pick it up.
Yeah. We have like a lot similar here. I would say, like we would always have like say like say there's like a character and we just have like a base, I guess you could call it a model. We have model sheet, obviously.
Yeah, or like a rig or something.
Yeah. So we have that, and sometimes there might be like a design refresh for a new season, but there's always like a base design for like characters, especially main characters that are established. But if there's like, say, like a character is wearing a specific outfit for like one episode or like one environment, then like that brand new design
somewhere.
Yes, like the file name has to resemble the like say, so there's a character and then like season 2, like you have that in the file name. So if that character is like wearing a coat, then the coat file name, the character with the coat, has to resemble that file name. Otherwise, like things can obviously get like pretty awry pretty fast.
Yeah, because I know there's like a thing. It definitely seems like continuity should be way easier to manage in like a 3D or, well, I guess any animated production compared to live action, because in live action you're shooting, everything across different days and different times, maybe with different crews sometimes, you're cutting together shots from one take and a different take. So it's easy to think like, oh, if you're doing, a 3D animated production, it's in the same environment with the same characters and the same rigs and models and everything, same, or you might think same lighting. It should be easy to not have continuity issues show up between shots, but the workflow of getting everyone to work on their piece sort of a little bit at a time, one animator's doing this part, another's doing this part, and it's all kind of going concurrently. And a lot of that is from information made earlier on, in like a layout stage that then gets passed down. Like it's very easy for stuff to kind of slip through, or like, we realize later, oh, we have to update the model for one of the characters. And then someone has to go through and then, you might have to manually like change it for every shot. And then you have to render those shots out again. And, you only have so much time to get everything done. So sometimes maybe some shots get rendered, some don't, or you might forget about it in one shot, or I don't know. There's probably better examples I could use to sort of explain to people why these things can happen.
Yes.
But it's basically just everyone juggling a lot of things at once, and the process not being as easy as it might seem. And also just even if you're in the same environment, per shot, we're moving things around. We're moving the rotation of the sun, the light. Like every shot is kind of its own little thing, even if it does look like it's in the same world. Rocks are being moved out of the way so people don't step on them. Trees are being moved to frame the scene a little bit better. Like the direction of the light is always going to be different to match the view of the camera. Things like that.
Yeah, like sorry for stumbling of words, but I always assumed that, there are just inherently like a lot more moving parts, honestly, in terms of, like say like even just like using like the sun, like just making sure that a very specific amount is like on the characters, and it just like lines up from shot to shot. There's definitely like a lot that I do take for granted. Oh man, I wish I thought of this earlier. I guess tying this back to like what we specifically do on our jobs. Mm-hmm. I remember we actually did have a segment in season 1 of the show I work on. For anyone who's joining us for this episode, I'm a production assistant on Disney's KIF, and if I remember correctly, we did have like a like a joke cutaway. So for the context, the two main characters in our show are trying out a VR headset from one of their friends. And there was just a whole segment that was animated entirely in 3D. I wish I knew more off the top of my head, but admittedly, if I had those details, I would have loved to like gain your perspective. I can still like drop the link in the chat because, you know, it is like a very funny clip as well. But, you know, I would love to like have your perspective.
Yeah, was that handled internally at Titmouse, or was that like an external? You got like another studio?
Yeah, I know for a fact that the clip was like the 3D segment. That was internal.
Okay.
I want to say, and I'll edit this if not, I want to say our art director Nico Guardia was able to animate that. Like he has experience. I think like Lazy Game Reviews did a video on like some of these like old 3D animation software from the 90s that I showed him. That was like immediately some of the stuff that he knew. So he was able to match the aesthetic pretty well. But yeah, for our process over here at least, so there's a lot of stuff in terms of like boards, asset stuff like that we do over here. We're primarily like a New York production, but we do have a handful of people that are in the LA area. And I want to say like at the end of like every week, like we get like these materials and we ship them over to Room, which is our studio in, well, not our studio, but like the studio that actually handles the animation work in Korea. And if I remember correctly, it's basically hand drawn, but like when it's digitally scanned, that goes like Toon Boom Harmony.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's Harmony. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that that uses nodes too, but I have not, me personally, I have not dug my claws deep to that program. Like the thought of it.
Yeah.
Man.
I have not either, but I have a lot of friends who worked in the 2D department at the studios I've worked at, and yeah, I've seen some of the crazy rigs that they've made in Toon Boom Harmony, and all the nodes and all the custom shapes and getting, you know, a 2D rigged character to like turn around in quotes, obviously not actually 3D, but you know, drawing all these different angles and shapes and controls. Yeah, it looks nuts. So
yes,
big respect to anyone who can handle all that.
Yeah, like I would definitely want to like. There's a lot of stuff that I would want to try on my own at least once, but the longer that I'm able to work in this field, the more respect I have for basically everyone at this point, because there's just like a lot of stuff that like I'm endlessly fascinated by, but like I know for a fact like building a model for me at this point, for instance, would oh man, that process. But yeah, you know, 2025, like for my own creative stuff, I'm definitely gonna overcome a lot of those hurdles. Let's see. Oh no, like sorry for the giggles. So one thing I did want to ask, since we're opening up with like job/industry talk, you had posted on your social media recently that you were working on the Pharrell Lego movie Piece by Piece. So how was that actually?
Yeah, that was my most recent work. Finished up about a year ago on that, actually. So that was, I think we stopped working on it around February 2024. So yeah, I was on that for a while. I built a lot of tools for it sort of early on while we were getting the sort of lighting process going. So I made a lot of the stuff, like basically every studio I've moved, because I've worked at a few different studios now. I basically remake the same tool like every time, you know. I make like a general kind of shot builder tool. So something that sets up all of the shots inside Unreal. So that's using, Unreal has a level sequence thing, which is like the cinematic file with all the camera movement and animation and all that stuff. And then a level, which is like the world that shot takes place in. So sort of making all that stuff, and then importing animation, setting frame ranges correctly. In this case, for Lego, we had that kind of Lego movie look. So our studio was handling all of the procedural like brick effects. So I don't do any of that, but I built the importer for it. So someone else in Houdini, which is like a very big VFX package, they would build a simulation of, Lego smoke or water. So like if you've seen the movie or, the other Lego movies, water is usually made with Lego bricks. It's not made with real water. Because it looks so much better when it's made with bricks. It looks really cool. So they would simulate that, and then, however they do it, they would kind of break it down into essentially voxel chunks, which are the Lego bricks. And that would be exported as an Alembic file, which had what they called a point cloud, which is basically turning each brick into like a dot. And then in Unreal, I coded a thing that would read that in and load it into Unreal's PCG system, which is procedural content generation, I think is what that stands for, which is basically just saying it's how you do procedural effects. So cool, maths-driven stuff. You're not sitting there by hand telling it, move this drop of water this much. You're coding like physics systems to make everything move. So this is basically taking an existing system that was made in Houdini, just bringing it into Unreal and assigning each point to the right brick geometry. So each point would have a value that would say, like number 1 would mean, for example, like a 1x1 Lego brick, something like that. 2 is a 1x2 Lego brick. Like each one, like a brick had an ID. So that ID would correspond to which brick would go in Unreal. And then same with colors, like each point would have a color attached to it. So we would use the right Lego brick color because they had a specific palette of colors that we could use, I'm pretty sure. So that's how we did, a lot of the brick effects. So basically every time, effects would say, oh, hey, we've exported the, smoke simulation again for when Pharrell drives off in his car. All someone had to do was just open up my tool, select the shot, click a button, and it would just import it again for them. And then after setting all that stuff up, then I got to, actually do lighting on the show, on the movie. So, a bunch of the sequences I worked on, for anyone who's seen the movie, sort of more around the middle towards the end. So I was lighting on. There's a scene where Pharrell's kind of. He's kind of getting a little like crazy with all his money now. He's had his big success and he's like walking through the city and he's buying a lot of stuff. So there's like a particular shot of him walking towards camera and he like smiles and he's got like gold, like his initials like gold on his teeth. So that was like a particular sort of like, I guess, hero shot that I did all the lighting for. And a lot of other shots in that sequence and a few other sequences, like when he's sitting at the beach and looking at like people at a bonfire on the beach. I did a lot of lighting for those shots as well. I know some of them would have been changed a bit after I finished working on them because we were collaborating with other studios as well. So some of our lighting would have been adjusted after we were done with it. So that it makes it a little difficult for me to sort of say, oh, I did that, because I'm sort of like, oh, wait, I think that looks a little different to how I did it at the time.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because I do think a lot of the lighting that I had done, I liked more than what the final sort of version went out. But obviously that's the business. That's like studio notes, that kind of stuff. But there was a lot of stuff where I think we had, like, there's a particular shot in that sequence where Pharrell is it's sort of cycling through different outfits, so it almost looks like a video game, like character select menu. So you can see like Pharrell in the middle, and then it kind of slides over, and there's another Pharrell, and you can see the other versions of him sort of on the edge of the screen, as it's as if someone's like sliding through a menu of like this one, and he's all in different outfits and he does a different pose. And the lighting I did for that shot originally, I was really happy with. They sent me like from the director or the one of the, I didn't work directly with like Morgan Neville, the director, or anything.
Right.
But we would get notes from downstream. Notes might come from the director, which then get filtered through maybe a producer, and then filtered down through I don't know, like an animation director, which like sort of down the chain. The note I got for that shot was this very specific reference. I forget what movie it was. It was some like French art film with like this footage of a woman on like a black background with these rotating colored lights spiraling around her, and she was like exhaling smoke, but it was played in reverse, so the smoke was going like back into her mouth. It was so weird. And they basically said like, make it look like that, like every when it cycles to a different outfit of Pharrell, like have the light like kind of drastically change colors. So basically every time it switched over, it would change from like this bright magenta on one half of him, and then like a bright green or yellow on the other side, and the lights would be spinning around, and then it would kind of shuffle to a different, like completely different set of colors, like for every outfit of the light as it was moving around. And it was really it was like really shiny, like on the back of his head, because the plastic, the Lego, we really want to get those like bright highlights on them. I was really happy with that shot, but then I saw it in the final movie, and it was kind of just like flat sort of white lighting. So I'm guessing the studio changed their mind, and they're like, no, actually make it look like this. And that was one I was like, that would have been a really good thing to have on my show reel. But alas, I don't think I I can say that anymore. But yeah, I ultimately, like, I'm still did a lot of work on the movie. I'm still in the credits as lighting lead, which was cool, or one of the lighting leads. Yeah, it was a very neat project, because I'm a huge fan of the original Lego movie, and it was cool to sort of make something mimicking that style again, but also in like a game engine. Is pretty crazy that we pulled that off.
Yeah, and of course, like I can say first off, obviously, congratulations on just being able to just like. Not only just like, wrapping a completed project, but getting your name in like a major movie like that, really happy for you.
It's very nice, yeah. Just all the other stuff I've worked on, I haven't been credited on. A lot of it.
Sorry about that.
I mean, a lot of it's been like kids kind of YouTube stuff, so they usually don't have credits at all. And then the project I did just before Lego at the same studio, I joined sort of partway through. So I think they said like, oh yeah, like put Caelum in the credits, but then I guess whoever was supposed to put me in like still used the old credits, so it didn't have me in it and a couple other people, and so that sucks. Things like that happen all the time. It's very unfortunate. I think it's the same in like the game industry as well, if people just don't get credited for their work. I wish it wasn't like that. It shouldn't have to be like, oh, woohoo, I got my name in for a thing I spent a year working on. Like, that should be a given. But I don't know. I don't want to complain too much, but I do wish it was a better practice in the industry.
Definitely. And I know it's definitely like, out of both of our controls, but at least on my end, one of the roles I do as a PA is, basically helping assemble, like literally like assemble the credits, like just like starting with the Excel sheet, getting the names. And I have thankfully many eyes across the production team that are able to look at all of that and just make sure if there's any errors.
Yeah, verify everything. Yeah.
And I'm very thankful for that, because there's just like a lot of departments that I inherently just don't keep a close eye on. So we just use that as a basis, and then that goes to our editors. The second pass if we need, all that, the whole world works.
Yeah, well, it's the advantage of being more like internal as well, because like the reason I haven't been like credited on like another thing, it's not from the studio I'm working at, it's the multitude of studios all it's one studio in this country, another in this country, another here, and then that they're all bringing their work together to the actual whatever production companies running it sort of at the base level, and then they're the ones that have to put together the credits and all that stuff. So it's more of like, if anything goes missing like along those lines of communication, or you can say like, oh, here's the credits, and they're like, oh, but they can just use the old ones because they didn't, I don't know, maybe they didn't see your email or something with the updated list. Like there's all those sort of barriers to get through where things can go wrong. But I mean, it's the fact that we have a more, I guess, connected global industry with that stuff now, where you can collaborate between countries, is really cool. But I think there's definitely still some room to improve communication and just general sort of workflow, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that part. You know, I obviously don't have much of a role of what comes to this, but I can say that I have like sat on meetings like once in a blue moon where, you know, we are directly interfacing with, you know, the people in Korea. And, you know, like some stuff does happen. Like there are differences in like creative vision, just making sure like everyone's on the same page regarding assets or like quality when animation take comes back and all that. No. And of course, from there's just a like entire like meta game, for lack of better expression, as to like if there are visual mistakes that like aren't really getting corrected with each pass. Yeah. Like determining if it's worth sending back versus just doing it in-house or just like fix it.
Exactly. Yeah. We run into that all the time of, you know, we get assets from a company and then we do our part, but then like, you know, the assets might be broken. And things like that. And it's always like, oh, do we just fix it ourselves, or do we kick it back and say, hey, can you fix this? But unfortunately, we're usually more of the kind of underdog side of like we're doing the work for them. So it's like if we kick it back to them and they're like, well, you know, like it becomes, there's a whole sort of like kind of internal politics thing that you have to be careful about there of not, I guess, wanting to like upset the other side, but it is
like rocking the boat too much.
But it is also like, well, you sent us something broken, so like don't complain if the thing looks broken. You know, we don't want it to look broken. Like we want it to look good because we're the ones working on it, and like we have to, you know, put our names on it too.
Exactly.
But if we fix it on our end, that's more of our team being taken off what they're supposed to be doing to go do something else, like to fix someone else's work, which shouldn't have been like that in the first place. But, you know, it happens sometimes, although sometimes it happens maybe a little too much. A little too consistently.
Yeah. So let's see. Oh, so I guess just transitioning slowly from your professional work into some of your more personal work. One thing that I have noticed is that there are times where you use some of your creative talents, like say storyboarding, general digital art, or 3D animation in some of your videos. I think it was your Sonic 2021 critique where you had like a whole like opening segment, and I still was like really impressed by that, like with how like bouncy the movement is. Like how long did that take to make?
That was a while ago. I haven't the reason I don't do those anymore is because they take too long to make.
Of course.
I think it got to the point where doing those little animated opening bits was kind of taking almost the same length as making the entire video after a while. Because I had like, you know, I'd have like a Sonic rig made by other people, but then you know, I'd usually build an environment and maybe I'd make little props and, you know, have to do lighting and and the animation and everything. And I also just felt that tonally, for the kind of videos I want to make, you know, because I forget if I said earlier, but yes, I do also make sort of like critique video essay things. I've shifted over time to a much more formal tone. My videos used to be a little bit more loose, still scripted, but not quite as kind of I guess like thoroughly thought about on a script level, and a little bit more jokey and kind of silly sometimes. And I don't mind having a little gag in here and there, but I've over time found that I'm trying to speak quite I get, like authoritatively, it's a persuasive text. It's a critique review thing. You're supposed to put your opinion forward, not as fact, of course, like it's an opinion, but you're presenting it in a way where it's just like, here's how I think, come listen to me. And I just found that I didn't want it to be super, like kind of silly or kiddie or, just little bits and stuff. So I don't know. I eventually kind of felt like the animated openings clashed with that a little bit. Right. And also just workflow wise, they were a lot of work, but they were fun to make. I'm happy with some of the stuff in them. There's definitely things I would do differently now. Like I think in some ways I've maybe over animated Sonic in some of those.
Right.
But getting to do like cool 3D smear frames and stuff, like I originally wanted to get into animation, like doing the animating part, the moving the characters part,
right,
but just kind of fell into studio needed Unreal lighters, and I was like, oh yeah, I know how to use Unreal. I did it in university, and then that's just kind of what I do because it was what I was hired to do, and that's just what I've stuck with since. But I would have loved to do like character animation or 3D modeling. Like I've done, I have an art station and a portfolio and stuff, and I've made a bunch of my own 3D models in Maya, and then I've kind of shifted over to Blender a little bit in personal time to try and just relearn everything because Blender's free. I don't have Maya at home, so having a free program is really nice. Blender's great. So that doing those little bits was it definitely brought more attention to the videos as well, like because I could post that little clip on Twitter as like a standalone piece of like, here's the little opening animation for the video essay, here's a link to it, and that definitely helped a lot. But a lot of work, and also I just felt for the more kind of serious tone I wanted to go for. I just thought, I don't need them anymore. I want the criticism to speak for itself, rather than having to have kind of flashy. I don't do like fancy video edits or anything. I keep it very simple and very plain. And it's not that I couldn't do more fancy stuff, because like sometimes I do if I have to like illustrate a point. But that's extra time out of my free time, because I have a full-time job as well. So it's extra time out of my weekends and weeknights and public holidays and everything to do all that fancy stuff. But it's also like, if it's not serving the point I'm making in the video, then I would rather just let the footage and my voiceover speak for itself.
Yeah, I definitely agree. As someone who also does video essays and is trying to get back into that, well, as opposed to when I first got started, I do have help from my partner Jay, who is likely going to be listening to this during the editing process. So, hi.
Hello.
But yes, I think that's where I've hit an impasse as well, because I would like to make some of my stuff look a little bit more polished because I'm more comfortable in video editing. Mm-hmm. But it's also like, if it doesn't necessarily like serve a purpose, it's not really necessary. Like, and that's why I respect like your visual style, because I know someone mentioned it in a comment, but it's like, I appreciate the attention to detail that you bring. So it's like, even if your reviews are primarily just bringing up, it primarily revolves around footage of your subject, but you choose intentionally the clip that syncs up with what you're referring to, what you're narrating about. And I think that's like a specific detail that, like, as someone who also edits, like, I do respect a lot.
Yeah, I put a lot of time into picking the right clips. Like, there's always going to be particular times where I'm saying something kind of general, and it's like, oh, I have no idea what to put as the footage here, and you just kind of pick something. Like something that like kind of fits what you're saying. But I will, I'll intentionally, like, I'll play when I'm doing a game, which is most of my videos is talking about video games, but I do film as well sometimes. I find when I'm doing games, I record it as normal, but then I always have to go back to record extra stuff. So, like, for example, I recently did a video about Shadow Generations, or bundled in Sonic X Shadow Generations, if that helps anyone. And I talked about how, you can air boost in that game, but the air boost doesn't reset after like homing attacking something. So I have to get footage of me, repeatedly, like over and over and over, homing attacking something, mashing the air boost button, showing it's not working. And then I might record that with like a controller overlay on the screen.
Yeah,
so
that's
you can
like
see
OBS,
my inputs.
right?
Yeah. So I just have there's like an open source website thing that shows like a controller graphic. And so I just put that in on top of the footage. But obviously, that's only there for the shots where I need it to be there. I'm not going to record all my footage with that giant controller graphic on it. So it's like I'm going into the game over and over and over after the fact just to like kind of like create the moments that I'm trying to talk about, because it's very difficult sometimes when you're in the editing stage and you're like, I've had times where, I do this and then this happens and then like this thing glitches out and I die. And then I've got to sift through, 20 hours or more footage to find when that happened.
Right.
So, taking notes while recording is good, or like sifting through your footage while writing the script is useful. Because a lot of my previous videos, like I know I'm really happy with my video on Hi-Fi Rush, the like rhythm action game from a couple of years ago. But there's things in that video where I'm explaining a point and I'm kind of in editing, I'm just putting text on screen to like reinforce what I'm saying or like show something. And that's a thing that I heavily try to avoid now, because that's a byproduct of me writing the script, recording the script, editing the video, and then realizing like, oh, I could explain this a little bit better, but I've already recorded all the voiceover and I don't want to go back and like add in all these extra lines or change something, because then I got to change a bunch of stuff. So I just kind of put some text in the screen so like someone can pause and read it to see, which like isn't inherently a bad thing, but I would rather that like if I'm going to explain something, like now what I'll do, and this makes the videos take even longer to make, is I really actively make sure like I have all the footage I need. If I'm talking about like a specific problem, then I get that footage first instead of like, oh, I can get it later. I'm like, no, I will get it now, and I'm going to watch it over and over, and I'm going to write the script like specifically around that clip so I know exactly how it will look in the final video, so it makes sense. Because I don't like thinking that someone's listening to what I'm saying, they're looking at the footage, and then like there's stuff on the screen that they've got to like go back and read if they want it to really make sense. I would prefer to just kind of put that directly in the text of the video, even if it maybe slows the video down a little bit. It just helps the point come across better. And that's ultimately what all my videos are about, is just conveying the points I'm making in as clear of a way as possible, using direct evidence from the game or movie to support it. And, the best thing with doing videos about movies is footage gathering, you don't really need to worry about, because it's the movie. Like, you have the movie, you don't need to go record extra, I didn't get footage of this level or something. It's like you have the full movie, you're talking about the movie, that's all the footage you really need. So when I've done videos about movies and I'm only talking about the movie and not other stuff, the editing for that is like, especially if it's, Jurassic Park, which I've seen a billion times, like I can edit that like really fast, because I know exactly what I'm trying to look for and, insert into the timeline.
Right. And let's see. So what I wanted to say is that I can organically insert, 2 of the viewer questions that we have. So one comes from Sukram, I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly, over on, I'm pretty sure it's Blue Sky. Let's see. Will you be reviewing the new Jurassic Park movie, or have you sworn off all future Jurassic crap?
That's a good question. So they're referring to Jurassic World Rebirth, which is it's coming out this year, I think July. The next Jurassic World movie, directed by Gareth Edwards, and being written by David Koepp, which is interesting because David Koepp is the writer of the first 2 Jurassic Park movies. Other than, of course, Michael Crichton as well, the author of the novels, who's passed away. So yeah, for those who don't know, Jurassic Park is my favorite movie of all time. I'm also just generally really into dinosaurs and like paleontology and stuff. And I made a big video called "Stop Making Jurassic Park Movies" a couple of years ago, which is like an hour-long video of me kind of going through each of the sequels and then sort of talking about general issues with them and with Hollywood and blockbusters and consumer culture and all this stuff. Basically coming to the point that Jurassic Park never needed a sequel in the first place. It's a perfect movie already. I thought The Lost World, like the second Jurassic Park movie, is very good, but like still you don't really need it. And then everything after that I just think is junk. And like I think they're all terrible and they're not made by the same people. Like Spielberg still directed the second one. David Koepp still wrote it. Michael Crichton still had a book, to be based off for it. Still all like Stan Winston effects and ILM. Whereas Jurassic Park 3, it's immediately obvious, like, okay, none of the same like head, not the same director, not the same writer. They didn't even have a script when making the movie or a finished script. And all the Jurassic World movies are just like complete, modern Marvel junk. So yeah, so as for the new one, Rebirth, I'm not actively planning on doing any kind of video for it. Part of that is just like a time and like investment thing. It's not about like the money and the growth for me, but at the same time, I make a video about, movies, even like the Sonic movies. Like my channel's got a lot of Sonic stuff on it. When I talked about like the second Sonic movie, that video has way less views than all my videos about the Sonic games. So it's just kind of like, I don't like these things anyway. I'm not really that interested in doing a whole thing about it. Like, I don't know, maybe I would. But yeah, I don't even like want to see it, like I feel bad as like a dedicated hater of these movies that I saw them in cinemas in the first place, like that I paid money to see them. And obviously like, Jurassic World, it was like fool me once, shame on you or whatever. Fallen Kingdom was like fool me twice, shame on me. But then Dominion, the last one, the most recent one, I only saw that in the cinema because I was in America with my friends at the time and we're all huge Jurassic Park fans and we knew it was going to be terrible. But it was also, for us, it was like, we're all together. When else are we going to get to like laugh at how bad a new Jurassic Park movie is, all in the same space in the cinema. And for that, it was worth it. But then I have the thought in the back of my head of like, oh, I paid money for this. Because everyone tells me like and all the comments of the video is like, well, if you don't like them, then like why'd you see them or like don't watch it or whatever. And part of that's a bit of a fallacy because it's like, well, okay, how do I know I don't like it if I don't watch it? Like for sure. But and also
then, like on the other side of the coin, you have people who saying like if you don't actually buy or consume or whatever, you basically have like no reason to like say anything negative about it. So there's like that side as well.
Yeah, there's always going to be some counter argument and then another counter argument that contradicts that one. So like you can't really please anyone with negative stuff. And then I get the thing a lot of like, why do they have to stop making them just because you don't like them? And I'm like, well, it's my opinion. Like if you like it, then like sure. But I have the sort of more general holistic view of like, I don't need IPs that I love to go on forever. Like, and the example I used was Back to the Future, which is my second favorite movie of all time. And Back to the Future has a trilogy, and it ended at a trilogy. It ended in 1990, and they never made any more. There's been a few little spin-offs. There's been a cartoon and a video game and comics and stuff. But like,
I heard the Telltale game was pretty good, actually.
I played it a while ago. I wasn't a big fan of it. It's probably better than the Jurassic Park Telltale game anyway, but
I didn't even know there was a Jurassic game.
Yeah,
and I've been a fan of Telltale stuff.
I mean, I will admit I don't think I've played any other Telltale stuff, so I'm not sure of like the general. Like I know people like a lot of this stuff, but I think I've only played the Jurassic Park and Back to the Future game. But yeah, Back to the Future to me is just the perfect example of like they had a story to tell, the story was over, and that's it. Like you don't need more. And you know, I see as well. Like yes, there's a value in. Every new Jurassic Park movie brings more attention to paleontology and to dinosaur interest in general, and I think that's great.
Yeah,
but and you know, it's the same thing what people say about like the Sonic movies of like, oh well, you know, you may not like them, but they're doing really well for the franchise. They're bringing a lot of money and a new audience, and the games will apparently get better magically because of the movies making money. And I'm like, even if that's true, what if the movies were good and they brought in a new audience, you know? Like wouldn't that be better? And that's kind of where I stand of like even if the new Jurassic Park stuff was good, I'm still kind of like, yeah, but they had a story to tell and it ended. Like let someone else make a dinosaur thing, because as much as I love Jurassic Park, it has like a stranglehold on the perception of dinosaurs to the wider public. And part of my issue, again, like I say in the the Jurassic Park video, is that the World movies, despite being 20, 30 years later, they've regressed in terms of like dinosaur accuracy compared to the first few movies. So the understanding of dinosaurs has not shifted despite 3 decades of evolution, like, paleontology research is not being conveyed in those movies. And as someone who is currently, I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to say, is currently working on a dinosaur related thing at work, the Jurassic Park / World, like kind of general art direction and like idea of what people think of dinosaurs is very much still what is informing all of like current non sort of documentary paleo media, basically. I find that very frustrating because I'm like, look, I love the Jurassic Park dinosaurs too, but a lot of them are wrong. Like, at the time, like the first movie, they were trying for the most part. There's a couple things they deliberately did wrong, like the Dilophosaur having a frill and spitting venom and stuff, and like naming the velociraptors incorrectly, things like that. But for the most part, like the first 2 movies and kind of the third one, they were trying. And then in Jurassic World, they just deliberately ignore everything. They just deliberately make things incorrect and different to how they were in the original movies. So I don't know. As for Jurassic World Rebirth, like maybe it'll be good, but like because if it was still like another Colin Trevorrow movie and written by the same people, I would say absolutely not, I'm not watching it. But because it is kind of like handing over to a new set of creators, I am a little bit interested, and because David Koepp is back to write it, right. So that does raise an eyebrow for me. And I think paleontologist Stephen Broussardi, author of The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, which is a very good book, I think he's consulting on it again, and he consulted on Dominion. And there's a lot wrong with Dominion, but you can see the areas where his influence has come through on like particular species, like the Therizinosaurus, which is the big like turkey one with the claws, feathered, right. And the like Quetzalcoatlus. You can see where he's like really trying, like, please put in some real stuff. So I'm if I see the trailer for this new movie and it actually has dinosaurs that look like dinosaurs, and it's going back to kind of like a horror thriller sort of tone, I don't know. We'll see. But I don't know if I'll do a video on it. I'll probably just post on Blue Sky or Letterboxd or something like, yep, I saw it. Here's some thoughts. Yeah. And then,
just maybe Kojima.
Yeah, maybe make a video about it later if I deem it necessary. But it's hard with movies as well, because it's like you kind of have to wait until like the Blu-ray comes out. Otherwise, you're just going off like trailer footage, which isn't very useful.
Right. Now, I will go on a little bit of my soapbox before I transition into maybe one more viewer question, and then just, we start the song section of the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked that Jurassic Park video essay you made, even as someone who is a complete outsider to that franchise, but you were able to explain not only what this franchise meant to you, but as you went on, you were summarizing a lot of my feelings regarding just, I guess, like the concept of legacy media in general. Because for some of the franchise that I like, again, I'm going on my soapbox, like namely Power Rangers, I feel like even if they don't necessarily end, I feel like for legacy franchises, I think the issue is instead of like they get to a point, like if they start in like say the 90s, that era is iconic, and I wouldn't want that to necessarily die. But it feels like, and maybe this might go for other franchises, and it might sound familiar, but I'll stick with Rangers for the sake of argument. But when it comes to the 2010s, like in order to get like more mainstream people back that might have not agreed with the 2000s, it starts aping off the 90s iconography. Yeah. And as a result, not only like, yeah, sure, you're probably going to get like some easy nostalgia bucks back, but you're just diluting like everything in order to appeal to just like, I guess, like that secondary audience. And then what you are making, it doesn't really feel as substantive because you're basically, I guess for lack of better expression, it's not even like an organic revisiting to like earlier ideas. You're just watering down iconography in order to just generate more money.
Yeah, you're almost like tainting the original, kind of.
Exactly. Because like over here, again, in like the Ranger fan base, and depending on how I word this, a lot of overlap could be with the Sonic fan base. Like there are more and more people that have been very frustrated that like branding, it has focused entirely on the first one, like Mighty Morphin, but not even like the entire initial era, but like the very first season. So like whatever people barely remember. So it's not even honoring the legacy of that first chapter. It's just what people half remember. And it's getting to a point where I want to say anything after 2009, everything has been trying to recapture that vibe, and it hasn't really stuck. And for merchandise, external media, whatever, more things are being made for that first incarnation. So not only are you not properly recapturing what made that first era good, you get more people, say my age or younger, who get resentful because that's a generation that gets quote unquote everything they want. Right. But it's not even because it's just diluted. And because of that, you have people more resistant, and not wanting to. Yeah, I guess like the initial phase of something is always creatively important, So you have like people who don't like outright reject it because they aren't really getting catered to. And the conversation is fascinating. I'm just not really doing like the best job at conveying it. But I guess like my main thesis is if a legacy franchise were to go on, it doesn't necessarily have to cater to me specifically in order to like be good again. Like if we were translating it to Sonic terms, I guess like adventure remakes wouldn't mean the franchise is saved after, a quote unquote onslaught of classic catered stuff. And it's weird. Like I feel like for franchises like that, I do feel, especially they generate like so much, I definitely feel like everyone can be catered to one way or another. But then when I realized that like franchises like this are ultimately meant for kids, when I realized that there's more media being like put onto the kids, but they're blatantly, targeting like the elders. It's like, hey, like maybe kids should be able to like have their own stuff too.
Exactly. Oh my God. Yeah. I feel that a lot. Like I don't like seeing, there's like a particular type of person that annoys me, and it's like people who project their nostalgia onto their children.
Absolutely.
Like very directly, of like dressing their kids up in like Star Wars outfits.
Yep,
and like,
I knew you were gonna bring Star Wars.
And like I'm gonna like make my kids, you know, love all the things and like, you know, sharing your passions with your kids, like that's great. Like I'm sure if I had kids, I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna show them Jurassic Park and Back to the Future and like Sonic stuff. Like, yeah, of course. But I'm not gonna like, it's not like my intent to turn them into a clone of me. You know, like I want my kids to have their own interests and their own new things they can get into. Like I really hate the idea that like, yeah, an IP has to go on forever so like a new audience sees it or whatever. And I'm like, why not have a new thing? Or literally, what is stopping you from, instead of going, hey, let's go watch Jurassic World 87, just putting on Jurassic Park? Like, you have it. It's an old movie. Yeah. You can get it anywhere. Like it's not going away. That's always been my thing, is like, yeah, they may not be new, cool, exciting things anymore, but like, so what? They had their time. Now let someone else have their chance, which, you know, is kind of, I mean, Jurassic Park's about dinosaurs, you know, extinction, like letting new species come in to evolve, like have their time, or, you know, or let the birds carry on the lineage or whatever, because birds are dinosaurs. But yeah, and the whole thing with like a franchise kind of fracturing off into a bunch of different things, like I get that, but also that kind of comes back to my thing of like, why do we need that? Because I don't think any of that is a creative decision. It's just we need to stick this IP onto something, but make it completely different from what it actually is. But just if we put the logo on it, people will watch it, or they'll buy it, or they'll play it, or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with someone whose, you know, first exposure to Sonic is the movies or Sonic Boom or Sonic Prime or whatever. But the issue to me is that as a fan of the original Sonic, which like, it sounds elitist, but like that is the real Sonic, because that's, Sonic was created to be that. Like that is Sonic by the people who made Sonic for the reasons they made Sonic, is the original Sonic. And then when I say what I want and what I'm, you know, missing out on because they're not doing the original Sonic stuff anymore, then it's like I'm this elitist, you know, horrible, cynical guy who doesn't want to let everyone have their own thing. And I'm like, look, like, that's, I'm like, it's fine, but do you not see the issue of having like 20 different versions of this like same thing that all kind of mix? And, you know, like my issue with,
and like that's like, also the after effect of just like people, and like I was on Twitter just like lurking, and I want to say, well, obviously due to unrelated events, other headaches, but I think like a big reason why leaving Twitter was a net positive was because of just seeing like the venom over over frontiers. Like, Jesus Christ, I saw people like intentionally like, you know, mischaracterizing people like people like JebTube, you know, even though you had footage, you were literally like, you could not explain your experiences better. And oh my God, like I definitely have like my own thoughts regarding like fandom discourse. So now we're officially in like the Sonic phase.
Hooray.
So I have lurked on forum subcommunities for a while. Probably I shouldn't have been doing that at such a young age, but a lot of the arguments and mindsets, you know, I find interesting when they still stay, when like a new generation ends up like copying them like accidentally. Like I guess like for example, now that I say like we're both in like our mid-ish 20s, so like when I see people in this like age group start talking about momentum, as in like compared to like I want to say maybe like 2010 when Sonic 4 is like starting. Then like the conversation over there was about momentum. Then like, you know, the fact that people don't even want to say that word as if it's a slur on Twitter and some, oh my God. But yeah, so I feel like the issue, and I'm not gonna like intentionally like name, well, not like, I'm not gonna insult anyone, because like insulting anyone for their preferences in like a cartoon blue rat as if it's politics is needless.
Yes.
You know, and I am genuinely interested in people's perspectives as long as people are nice, or rational, I guess. Now, from my perspective, it definitely feels like as time went on, people were, no, I'm not saying you, obviously. I'm just like, you know, recounting like my thoughts, my feelings.
Yeah, sure.
Because I guess with the idea of like Sonic is Sonic, when I was growing up, I want to say 2004 onwards until like 2012, I was consuming like classic and quote unquote modern media, and I didn't really feel a certain way of it. And Generations is still one of my favorite games.
Me too.
I think post Sonic 4, I think that's when, and especially post Mania, I think that's what really ignited the idea that like classic Sonic is good and an end of. Like, not even preference, it felt like it was a complete discredit of like any of modern Sonic's advantages. And while I'm like, I think getting mad at an IGN review is definitely very pointless, but I take issue more with ideas than individuals themselves. So I feel like the idea, and yeah, probably it's like a joke, but I feel like the idea of saying anything was never good, let alone Sonic, still kind of unnerves me, because it is not just saying 3D games bad. No, even if you're just like joking about it, it's discrediting like the impact of an entire franchise. I think that is much more reductive, or just wanting to respect everything that came. Like, it's a whole picture. Like, if, you know, if Sonic died to you and like, no, after Adventure 1, Adventure 2, that's fine, it's your preference. But to say that none of it was good or all of it's bad, like it's a fact, I think just for the sake of respecting stuff, I think that's a lot more dangerous. God, I'm talking in circles, but I feel like with post-Mania and more people, like having this praise for classic Sonic, and despite us game-wise only having mini and superstars, but I knew that like in terms of marketing, classic Sonic was like very, very pushed heavily, and considering the quote-unquote drought from Forces to Frontiers, I guess, I don't know, I guess to summarize it succinctly, people don't respond well to perceived superiority, or being told that like the stuff that they feel strongly about is objectively bad, or if like things, or basically like the franchise would only be good if it were just like the games that I liked when I was a kid, not you liked when you were a kid. So like, yeah, there's like a lot of complicated feelings. I'm just like, you know, generational bias or whatever, which obviously doesn't apply. We're the same age and you prefer classic Sonic. And, you know, I feel like it's just interesting to think about. But okay, I'm sorry. You can feel free to chime in anytime. These are just thoughts that I've had for a long time regarding the state of like Sonic discussion. And honestly, like with your proposals for, you know, just like a 3D classic Sonic game, I think, you know, I think that's completely fine. You know, for the sake of like freshening up, because like after my own personal dissonance between like the 5-year wait, or what felt like it, I keep forgetting, between Forces releasing and Frontiers, like I just did not like it. Like I'm able to like be more honest about it now. Now that I'm off Twitter and like I've had time to think, but I'm like, if they can do that just for the sake of freshness, then yeah. But I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'll probably like trim a lot of this, but I guess I'm not sure about the idea of like, you know, having Classic be the face of a franchise, I guess. Despite not wanting, you know, okay. Finally, to circle everything up, if there are multiple variants of a franchise that exist, I feel like new media within that should be able to recapture what exactly was with those initial incarnations that made that good, instead of just making it into a marketing icon. And just straying further. Yeah.
I would say, please. No, that's all right. I think, like, because I've never said, I don't think I've ever said, like, oh, they should only make, you know, classic Sonic games that I want and never make any other modern stuff. You know,
right.
I take more of the opinion of, I love the classic Sonic stuff, and remember, I was born in 1998. I was not even around when classic Sonic was the face of Sonic. But that is the style of Sonic that I think is best, and it is like the original intended vision of that series. And I'm of the opinion, like, keep doing modern stuff, but just keep it far away from the classic stuff. Like, you don't intermingle them, because they're very different and they appeal to different groups of people in different, or maybe the same groups of people in similar ways. You know, like I still like Shadow Generations. I like a lot of the modern character, you know, like I like Shadow, I like Blaze, I like Rouge, Omega. Like, I like a lot of these characters, Cream as well. I don't want to get rid of them. I just think that the original vision of Sonic is so much purer, and that's why you see like so much. I don't think it's as much anymore, but there was a period, especially after Mania, where like classic Sonic became more of the face of like the brand again, which I do think is like, I understand people being upset by that if that's not their version of Sonic, but I do think as well, like, you do need to remember, from the perspective of someone who, say, grew up with classic Sonic, that version of Sonic was gone for like 20 years and like never, or maybe not 20 years, sorry, Generations was like the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
So I guess it's more like 10, 12, 15 years, something like that. That version of Sonic was gone like forever, and you never got like anything like it again, except like maybe the Sonic Advance games. Everything else was like radically different. And so modern, you know, the modern Sonic we know replaced classic. It wasn't like a supplement. It completely cut off that lineage of what Sonic was. So for it to then come back again alongside the modern stuff as well, I feel like, I don't think they did it perfectly, but the idea of having, you know, a Sonic Mania and like, maybe not Sonic Forces, because that game is bad, but, you know, like having like a Sonic Mania and, you know, a modern 3D Sonic game as well. Like, that's what I think they should be doing. That should not be put classic Sonic in the modern games. It should not be, you know, put modern stuff in the classic games. Like, just have, you know, 1 year you get a new modern Sonic game, another year you get a new classic Sonic game, something like that. Because for the people who are like upset that they think modern Sonic is going away, which I would say it never did, and it was never going to. You got to remember, like, think of all the people before that who were finally getting their version of Sonic that they lost a long time ago. And it's the same with, you know, when I complain about how much I don't like the voice actors, like the current English voice actors, and people are like, oh, so you want them to lose their job and get replaced? And I'm like, well, if you
just have an opinion.
Yeah, but it's like, if you like the current voice actors, you do know that they replaced people before them, right? Like I liked the original ones and I want them back, and you're mad that means the current one loses that job, that role, but like they replaced the one I like. So like I don't think you could really use that as a reason to shut someone down. Like it's not me saying I want this person to go homeless and like run out of money for no career. It's just like I prefer this voice of Sonic. I prefer all these, and that's my thing of like, when you have different interpretations of the same series within itself, like at least something like Sonic Boom and the movies, I can kind of separate. My issue is that they intermingle a little too much. Like now there's movie stuff coming into the games, and like Sonic Boom was still like all the same kind of like English voice cast and a lot of the same kind of style of writing as the games. And I was like, these don't feel that much like a spin-off to me. But at least I can kind of separate them. Like officially they are a different thing, even though it's still Sonic, and people will still get confused. At least I can kind of like segment it off in my mind. But when you have things like, modern and classic Sonic still all existing under the same Sonic game umbrella, or, the characterization of modern Sonic drastically changing between every game, where like he used to be still for the most part like the original Sonic, and then over time shifted more into the more of like the Western idea of Sonic as like the snarky superhero, cocky, kind of annoying, like high school bully kind of character. And then it's like, well, you don't have that separation anymore of like, well, that's Boom Sonic and this, it's like, no, this is supposed to be the same character, but it's just very clearly not. And that nuance gets lost a lot in discussion, because I'll say like it's hard for me to say that Sonic as a character is like one of my favorite characters, because there's so many times when that version of Sonic is just like wrong, where it's like that's not the same character. And I have that with the movies as well, of like the movies are separate but they're still called Sonic the Hedgehog, and people say, oh, that's Sonic, and I'll say like, that's not Sonic, that's a different character who is called Sonic, who kind of looks like Sonic, and people get really upset by that. But like it's true. Like they don't have the same personality traits. They act completely differently. They look differently. It's Sonic in name only. And that's like, I'm like the champion of like subjectivity. Like all my videos, I'm like, this is not fact. I'm not trying to say that what I think is right. This is all just me communicating my subjective opinion. But I think stuff like that is like the closest we can get to objectivity, of saying like, yes, it's called Sonic, but it's not the same character. Like they are character traits and, familial connections and stuff that are, Sonic in the games does not have a dead owl mother. Like these, that is a fact. Like these are separate characters that may be a little similar because they run fast. And that was the whole thing of my stagnation of 3D Sonic video, where at the end I basically drew a parallel between the current 3D Sonic gameplay to that like original ugly movie Sonic design, where I said like, you can look at it and tell it's supposed to be Sonic, but obviously something is wrong, and then they redesigned him to look more like the original Sonic, and people liked it more, because when people like something, they want that thing. Like, why would I want to play Sonic games or watch a Sonic movie if it doesn't have any of the elements about Sonic that I like? Because I completely understand, especially for an adaptation or a long-running series, like you're going to change stuff eventually, and that's fine. But I think change needs to be really heavily thought out, because like in the Sonic Spitball series by, at the time, Shaymay, but Shugels is his channel name now, he makes the great point of that if you're going to make a change, you are implicitly asking your audience to have a preference between the old one and the new one. Because if they already like the old one, then why are they going to automatically like the new one, you know? Or maybe they will like the new one because maybe they think it's better than the old one, but then there's going to be people who don't feel that way. So if you're going to make changes like that, you have to be really careful. And I think Sonic has been historically one of the most mismanaged series in regards to that stuff. Like the fact that the first movie almost happened the way it did is insane. And even then, the final movie is still Sonic as an alien in a policeman's car going on a road trip. Like no one as a fan, I think I can definitively say that anyone who was a fan of Sonic prior to the movies, if they were given a pencil and said, write a script for a Sonic movie, I don't think anyone would go, oh yeah, I would make Sonic an alien and he has an owl mother who gets killed and he goes to Earth as a baby and he stays in a small town and meets a police officer and sits in his car to go to San Francisco. No Sonic fan would do that. They would have Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles going on an adventure through a cartoony world, fighting Eggman and robots, and you know, it would be a Sonic story. But
right,
the Sonic movie is not a Sonic story. It is a kiddie CG character meets human character, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Smurfs, Marvel thing, you know. And like
personally, you know, I'm not surprised. Well, I guess like not surprised at like how, you know, to appeal to a general audience, especially assuming that like kids can't handle stuff or whatever, that whole discussion. I'm not surprised the movies are the way they are, but I completely understand people wanting, you know, like just like a movie setup that is more faithful to their games of origin, like no matter what. Because like as the deeper we go into that movie franchise, it's like the way that movie world is, like I'm struggling to imagine like how, you know, games like CD can really be implemented in that world, or even the more fantastical stuff. Like they already skipped Adventure 1. Like how would Heroes? How would Unleashed? How would Colors? Like who knows what they're going to draw from?
Yeah, they're so limited by their setting, which is why I fundamentally disagree with the concept of live action Sonic. Like I fundamentally think it cannot work. And that's why to me, it doesn't matter what they do. I will always dislike those movies because the only way for them to feel like Sonic again would be to redesign the characters to not look hideously ugly, and just be fully animated. And it sucks because, like, you know, I look at Shadow and he still has the problems of all the other characters. Like, I don't like all the fur and the split eyes and stuff. But like, I look at Shadow's design in the third movie and I'm like, you know, he looks the closest to game Shadow and he looks better for it. And like Knuckles as well. And then I look at Sonic and he's the ugliest one. And I'm like, he's the main character and he looks, he's like the worst character in his own movies. Like, he looks bad. He's annoying. Like, I really don't like the way he's written and the way he talks. I just find him infuriating. And it sucks because like everything else is like slow, you know, Tails was a little bit better. Knuckles was a bit better. Shadow's a bit better. And then like, okay, but what about Sonic? He's the main character. Can he look a little better? And I feel bad saying this stuff because I love Tyson Hesse and everything he's done. And he's for anyone unfamiliar, he's a longtime Sonic fan who's done a bunch of other animated Sonic stuff, who came on to redesign Sonic for the first movie and is now like producer and like sort of general like animation director for all the movies. And I love his work, but he is like, he's fighting against those limitations of the movies a lot. And I've spoken to him in person about this stuff of just like, you know, would it be possible, like, would you be fighting for like an animated Sonic movie that feels like Sonic? And basically the short of it was him saying like, Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie, but it's the lowest grossing Spider-Man movie. And you know, from a higher up studio level, that's all they care about. Which is why I find it so weird that like people can like the movies, that's fine, but I do find it strange the love for them as if they are these creative masterpieces, when to me they are so obviously just corporate slop. Like,
Yeah.
that they're a product with recognizable Sonic branding elements on them
And Olive Garden.
yeah, to sell tickets and sell toys and, you know, like I just don't. I know the people involved are trying to put Sonic stuff in it, but a Sonic movie is not good because Eggman's ringtone goes off and it's a song from the games. That is not a story that is like worth telling to me. And I'm completely understanding of changing things to make more sense in an adaptation. Like, I think as a good example, the way they handle like the Chaos Emeralds in the movies, how they're sort of consolidated together like into the Master Emerald, that makes like complete sense for a movie story. You don't want the characters, we have to go and collect all 7 Chaos. Like, that works for a video game as like a thing to do, but not in a movie story. Maybe in like a TV show like Sonic X, but not in a movie. So I get that. I'm fine with that. And, you know, little changes like that. But when you fundamentally alter the appeal of the characters and stick them in a world that is so boring, then I don't have any interest. And it's the same to me of like the live action Transformers movies, you know, like as a fan of Transformers, I'm only aware of these movies because they're called Transformers. Like, if I wasn't a fan of Sonic, I would have no interest in the Sonic movies, you know, like it's like a product name. And it's the same with the Jurassic World stuff, you know, like if they weren't sequels to Jurassic Park, I wouldn't care, and I don't think a lot of other people would care either. I think they would make way less money, and that's why they're still making things with Jurassic in the name, is because they know people will pay money to see it because it's attached to a thing they like originally, instead of making something new original for them to like, you know?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think my own dissatisfaction with a lot of Sonic media, you know, sadly, Sonic has been bonded to my DNA like a symbiote, for lack of better expression.
Me too.
Yeah, I can never depart from it entirely, you know, but, you know, like, I definitely just feel like it can be better. And, you know, I don't think it's bad to just talk about it or discuss it, even if those wishes don't come true, even if those wishes make a lot of sense. But I think in the coming years, just in terms of increasing my media diet in general, it's why I don't regret at all. Like, I've always played a lot of these fan games, but we're now in an era where a lot of these people are becoming full-on indie devs, and I'm really happy to see that. You know, as a matter of fact, it was so I had already got the Spark games. It was your video that finally made me pull the trigger and get Penny's Big Breakaway, and that game specifically, like, I'm still in the first world. And the yo-yo mechanic is very interesting, and it's definitely on a learning curve, and these levels for me last longer as a result, but I find myself just replaying those initial levels, not because I don't want to progress, but because, like, the level design, the graphics, you know, it's a good experience, and I want to be able to experiment and, like, get better. And I have visual indicators as to how I'm getting better with the combo system, the feeling, and honestly, I just want to support it anyway. Like, I got, like, Sonic Frontiers for, like, a 20, and I just can't progress in that game.
I hate that game.
I don't really. Yeah.
I hate that game so much. I'll never understand the love
I
people
don't understand.
Have for it.
Yeah, it's like, no, peak fiction, Sonic's back. And I'm like, after 5 years, it was basically 5 years, right?
Yeah. 2017 was Sonic Forces, so yeah. It's a 5-year gap, and that I feel like if that drought didn't happen, people would not like Frontiers anywhere near as much as they did. Yeah.
I still can't believe we had an era. I think one of my friends had ended up posting like a joke video on under the Twitter mentions, and it was just like a guy running, like doing like parkour in like first person, and like getting chased, and the whole thing was just like, you know, when you asked the Sega social media team to like actually put out news for Sonic Frontiers, and there was a lot of nasty comments, but it's like, it's not that the argument that I've been annoyed the most about is like, you can't hold Sega or Sonic Team accountable. You don't want another Sonic 06, do you? Which I feel is a very fundamental misunderstanding, because that seems to be more so a production nightmare, rush deadlines, and unrealistic expectations. Fans did not like have a part in like Sonic 06's production like being bad, and I feel like criticizing people who make things that you like to make them better is good, as long as it's not harassment, obviously. But you should want better media. And on the other side, and you remind me of this in your Sonic movie videos, basically everyone's saying that like, hey, they did what you wanted, now you better see it, otherwise we're never gonna get shit like this again.
Yeah,
that's also not good.
No, I think that's insane to claim that, like, well, they kind of did what you asked for, so now you're obligated to support it. And, it, like, I'm seeing all these articles about, like, the Sonic movie franchise has now passed $1 billion at the box office, like
and making a culture war. I always get annoyed by that personally.
Yeah, and like, and the Sonic movie 3 is like beating Mufasa and stuff, and I'm like,
and Harley Quinn. Oh, Birds of Prey. Yeah, there was Birds of Prey.
I'm just like,
come on.
Why does this affect me as a fan of the movies? Like, what? Because they made money and then we'll get more. Like, okay, but why can't we be happy with what we have and, like, I don't know, treat the art? It's sort of this fundamental issue I think a lot of like big fans of modern pop culture entertainment kind of have, where they want to treat their interests, whether it's video games or if it's like big blockbuster movies, as big deals, serious, like, take me seriously, like, this is good, it's not junk.
Like they're on like a cheering for like a sports team, right?
Yeah, like you made fun of me for this, but now like it's big, it's a big deal, like look at how much money these Marvel movies are making, and that kind of stuff. But then they don't want people to actually treat them as art. Like, they want the perception of this stuff is as important as, all these big like Oscar nominated movies and these highly acclaimed games and stuff. But then when people actually treat them like that and say, okay, well, we're going to treat, like a big Marvel movie with the same level of like artistic scrutiny we would apply to The Godfather or whatever, suddenly they freak out. It's like, no, stop. It's just fun. Turn your brain off. Like, don't think about it. And like, you're trying to ruin my thing.
The Martin Scorsese incident, right?
Yeah. So it's like, well, is it this like revolutionary, amazing thing we have to take seriously, or is it dumb stuff for kids that we're not allowed to criticize? Like it,
right?
Like, you have to pick one. You can't have it both ways. And yeah, I feel that a lot with like Sonic stuff as well. They want Sonic to be this. They want Sonic to go back to being like the rival to Mario, which I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But they don't.
It's like Sega making a Dreamcast 2. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, but they don't want that level of like attention and seriousness to mean that then we scrutinize the games as much as something that big probably deserves to.
Right.
And yeah, to hold fans accountable for a company's decisions is very strange, because it's like the fans didn't make the game. The people who made the game. So
yes,
so direct your your fair, nuanced, respectful criticism to them, not to the random people on Twitter.
Exactly.
So I find that very strange. And also just in something else I remembered is just in the general narrative of how like Sonic is back, like the movies are saving Sonic. It's always, people always say the movies and Frontiers, and I guess now like Shadow Generations, are like, they've saved Sonic, everything. And like, to me, then I'm like, is everyone forgetting about Sonic Mania? Because like, I don't know if people remember, but like Sonic Mania was a big deal. Like, it wasn't just like a classic Sonic little niche thing. Like, everyone loved Sonic Mania. Like, it was, I mean, there's going to be people who didn't like it, of course, but like,
Yeah.
generally that was the best received Sonic thing in a long time, and it was like a general return to form. And that was also what sort of kickstarted then you'd see like way more, if we're going to talk like brand stuff, there's like Sonic toys like everywhere, like after Mania, because it was all like, and it's classic and modern, but you'd see a lot of classic stuff too. Like, I have a bunch of classic Sonic toys like on my shelf now, and like all of that is Sonic Mania is doing. That is not to do with, I mean, maybe now it's to do more with the movies and everything, but I feel like people willingly leave Mania out of the conversation because, it's classic Sonic and I don't like it.
And that's definitely unfair. Like, from my perspective, like, even if, like, okay, like, I will always respect the classics, and, I have played them. I've beaten Mania multiple times, and I remember that genuine excitement because, as super fans like us, I was keeping track of the team, various people that have worked, on me, like Christian Whitehead, Simon Tomley. Mm-hmm. And, I'm glad that they're household names that, like, for a lack of better expression, normies know about.
Yeah.
But, knowing how they got their start, like ROM hacks, Sonic Mega Mix, I remember I was in like junior high and I was lurking on Sonic Retro for like a thread, and it was like I think like the very first trailer of like the Sonic CD like iOS remake, and then it got picked up by Sega, and then like the whole hill started rolling, and it's like like, not to get parasocial obviously, but it's like you're cheering on like people who made it out, and I'm really happy.
Absolutely.
It was like a labor of love. And there was plenty of post-classic material that did get referenced in Mania. You just gotta like look at it. Like the Hornet in Studiopolis, the fact that they got for the, I think it was the multiplayer announcer, they got Takanobu Mitsuyoshi to do the voices. It's like they're doing their homework. It was just like loving Sonic, and that era for everyone was really great, and it made Forces coming out just that it stung that much more, because I wanted that game to be a return to form for what like 2000s fans or adventure fans, I want that to be their Mania, like it might never have like mainstream appeal, but if they got like a really bomb ass adventure boost type game, then I want both parties to be happy.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like Shadow Generations has kind of done that now a little bit. Yeah,
I've seen people who normally like don't keep up with Sonic games like going nuts over Shadow specifically, and these people do exist, no shade, but there are people who might not consider themselves like Sonic fans, but they do specifically love Shadow 05, I guess we're calling it now. And once they saw that I guess Shadow, I'll just call it Shadow Generations as like Shadow 2 in a sense, like they're over the moon, and I'm happy for them. I got to pick it up eventually just because, I mean, it does look good. I want to support good products, even though I still have the original Generations. I will say, hot take before I have like a final question about media, and then we can like wind down. I will say, despite me being still like unsatisfied with Forces as a package, I'm a little bit like easier on some of the music, and specifically some of the classic stuff. This is where I'm gonna get into hyper nerd territory. But I think you can agree you have like an ear for this stuff. But it seems that whenever they revisit the classic sound, specifically like the Sega Genesis sound, it hasn't been great. Yeah. So what I noticed, because like I've been adjacent to chiptune scenes in the past. Some of my friends are way more knowledgeable about this stuff, but I have done Genesis chiptune as a fun hobby. And I remember Ghost Town specifically sounding similar to Naofumi Hayato's work. I think he's the name one of the composers. And then it was like one of his like tracks for like Virtual Racing Deluxe, like an old Genesis game, and it was like 1-to-1. But I didn't really see people discuss it from like that end, because for a lot of people it's just like, it goes back to the idea of like iconography versus like how the thing actually was. Like Genesis music is like a lot more complicated and nuanced than people remember and may give it credit for. But most people, they'll hear like a sound font slapped onto a MIDI, and that gets a lot of views because like for a lot of people that's just what they remember. Even though like the classic trilogy has like a lot of instruments and variety in those music that goes beyond like 12 instruments in like a typical fan composition. So, and I'll also freely admit, there's like a lot of like, I guess I would say I'm a little bit more lenient on like electronic, like EDM stuff. Like some of the cyberspace songs I do like, but I did not, as of this point, I didn't really care for a lot of stuff in Shadow Generations that I've heard. And I recognize some of the guest composers they had, like Teddy Lloyd, but like that direction and whatever they were going for I think Colors Ultimate, I won't die on that hill. I'll say that.
I don't like that stuff either. And yeah, for like the Mega Drive Genesis music stuff, I think that's an issue as well. That's sort of like an easy thing people can misinterpret with like people like me who prefer the classic games. I think a lot of people think we want exactly Sonic 1, 2, 3 and Knuckles CD again with like no changes, which is like not at all what I'm asking for.
Right.
Like Sonic Mania to me, I don't think it changed, like it evolved enough as it could have, but at least it felt like the best level design we've ever had in a classic game, like a lot more focus on slopes and using the terrain.
Definitely.
Because like even the original Sonic games, you get like a few levels, like Sonic 1, everyone knows, like Green Hill, Starlight Zone, kind of Spring Yard Zone are like the really fun rolling bouncy levels. And then, then you go in the other levels and they're like a lot slower and blockier and they're not very fun. Sonic Mania feels like it's consistently built to feel more like the best parts of the original games. And then even now with like fan games like Sonic Galactic, the new demo that came out recently.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful.
That level design to me, I'm like, this feels like it's not trying to mimic the original games exactly. It's trying to improve upon them, which is what I want. And that's how I feel with the music is like Sonic Mania doesn't sound like Mega Drive music. It sounds like CD quality, Saturn era, like music in the same like genre ballpark, but with, real, well, it's still synth instruments, but, not limited by the hardware. Because I don't think people love the Mega Drive music for the instruments. They love it for the melody because the melodies are really good. Like the actual songs themselves are great. The instrumentation might be why they like them, but I feel like they would like them just as much if they were performed with more, complicated instruments and synths, and that's my thing with like the classic Sonic stuff in general is like I'm not necessarily saying that the next 3D Sonic game needs to be classic Sonic aesthetically. I just want a return to the depth and like skill ceiling of classic Sonic instead of being so rigid and binary. Like if they make Sonic Frontiers 2, it's still a modern Sonic game, but Sonic can actually roll in a ball and go down hills and go through loops and like hit enemies without stopping and bounce off springs and keep his momentum and all that kind of stuff, then I'll be like, all right, cool. Like in theory, if they do it well, you've given me what I want. Like it doesn't have to be with the classic aesthetic, even though I would prefer that, especially over like Frontiers being in a big barren wasteland. That's what I want, an evolution of the good parts of those games. I want the music more like Sonic CD, but with level design more like, 3 Knuckles and Mania, but improved. And I want new like character abilities. Like Superstars had a good idea of like the Chaos Emerald powers. Yeah, but that game just, And again, like, huge classic Sonic fan, I didn't like Superstars at all. Like, I thought it was really boring, and like the music sucked and the bosses sucked, and you know, like, I'm sure there's value there if I went back to like really dig into it, but it did not click with me at all. So, you know, I'm not a blind Sonic, like classic Sonic consumer or anything.
Yeah.
I have my preferences, and that's the same thing with a game like Penny's Big Breakaway. Like, I have barely seen any Sonic fans, like other Sonic YouTubers, for example, talk about that game because Sonic's not in it. But for me, I love Sonic for the characters in the world, but I also love it for that unique gameplay. So when Penny's Big Breakaway comes along and like kind of gives me like an alternate take on Sonic-like mechanics in 3D, then yeah, it's going to be like one of my favorite games of the year, because that's what I've been asking for what feels like all my life now with 3D Sonic games, is just like adapt why Sonic was fun originally instead of making it this binary mobile game where you're just shifting lanes and mashing the homing attack button over and over. Like, Shadow Generations did it pretty well, but there's still limitations to that formula that I feel are really holding them back.
Right. And yeah, like for the sake of variety, I would definitely, I do hope, we get that, because even as someone who was coming off of Generations, just like the way Frontiers controlled, just like I just did not click with it. Maybe I could get used to it in like say at the cyberspace levels, like in that environment, but it never feels good.
Well, that's why, because you didn't spend half an hour tweaking all the sliders and the buttons to to change Sonic's movement.
The fact that they just go, all right, fuck off. Here, you do it.
Yeah. No, that's literally it. If anyone says the controls in Sonic Frontiers are bad, then people in the comments go, but you did the controls? Like, it's I can't stand that.
Or install like a subset of mods.
Yeah, but I cannot think of any other game I've ever played, especially a platformer, that's like, oh no, you change the steering sensitivity and like the deceleration on the jump. But like no other game would do that, because you design the game around the movement. So to make the movement customizable, to me, is like actually crazy. I don't know what they were thinking with that, other than just throwing their hands up and saying, we don't know how to make Sonic play well, you do it. And even then tweaking the sliders, like, you can only do so much. You can't change Sonic gluing to objects and all those kind of things. So
before we sign off, I do want to just generally ask, like, in terms of non-Sonic media again, so, and I guess, like, regardless of, like, anything else that we previously discussed, what have you been looking at, watching, reading lately? Anything interesting?
I've been watching Cowboy Bebop for the first time.
Oh, man, yeah. I wish I mentioned that earlier. I finished it late last year. Well, I'll probably ask you about the new server. I'm really interested in your thoughts. Like, can you summarize them, like, so far?
Yeah, so I've kind of been, like, semi-jokingly been someone who's said for like a long time that, like, I hate anime, just for like the tropes of a lot of stuff. Like, I love the way a lot of them look. I mean, there's also some styles where I'm like, oh, that looks really ugly, but like for the most part, I love the way they look. I like how they're a form of animation for adults and not just for kids, because that's a big problem we have in the West, is that like anything animated is immediately for babies and not for anyone else. So I like that. It's just a lot of them. I have friends who are like really into anime, and every single thing I would see, I'm like, this is just like half naked children like all the time. But I really don't like that stuff.
People get really mad when you point that out, but not that the whole medium is like that, but it's not immune from criticism either.
Exactly.
That's important.
I don't like all the sexy schoolgirl stuff, or even like when every adult female character, there always has to be like some kind of fan service shot of them, and I'm just like, can we not just treat them like human beings? So all that stuff kind of turned me off. But Cowboy Bebop was always the one where I'm like, I will watch that one day. It looks like something I would like, along with like the Ghibli stuff. And there's a few others I want to get to eventually, like some of the Lupin the Third, things like that. I'm interested in trying those. But yeah, Cowboy Bebop, I've only got like 3 episodes left. And
Nice.
I love the way it looks. I love the way it sounds because I've always loved jazz music and like jazz fusion and stuff. So it's like great atmosphere and tone and everything. I'm not like, I like the show, but I'm still not like big on it because to me, my issue is the individual episodes don't really like tell a story that much. It's just kind of like things happen.
Yeah.
And there's kind of like an undercurrent of like capitalism's bad and things like that, which I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. But like, what's the story? Like, is someone going to have like a character arc or anything? And I don't mean that in the sense of that each episode is quite like standalone because they don't really share like plot threads between them or anything, and that's fine. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what like Sonic is ideally like to me as well, is kind of these standalone little adventures that don't necessarily have to connect, where it's just about Sonic going on an adventure and meeting someone and helping them and changing their life in some way. So Cowboy Bebop felt like it's kind of trying to go for that, but nothing really like happens most of the time. Like I don't really feel like the characters, like even the one episode characters, are like really changing a lot. It's not like, you know, Spike and the crew meet them and they go on an adventure and then they have this change of heart or something, you know, like just basic story. Like it feels more like plot than story, like plot and mood over actually telling a story.
Right.
And I don't know if that's a controversial opinion because I know Cowboy Bebop is like an extremely popular anime that everyone swears by. I don't dislike it. Like I think it's good, but narratively it's not really doing much for me. But I do love the way it looks and the way it sounds and everything.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. Like over here in Burger Town, for lack of better expression, Cowboy Bebop was a very important show. Like over here, it was basically synonymous with Cartoon Network's Adult Swim block. Basically, almost for as long as I've been on Earth. Like they've just like reran it constantly. Like I thought they just like owned it outright, but then Netflix got the rights and we all know how that went. So me watching it last year was definitely just like a rite of passage to not only see it in its entirety, but every episode. Some, like if you rip your Blu-rays like I do, sometimes things get pretty annoying because the way that they track their episodes and like tracked or whatever, it goes by the order of the Japanese broadcast, which is very anal because everyone else is just the order that like you would just get in the back of the box.
Right.
So like all the episodes are jumbled around. But yeah, regarding the characters, you know, I find it fascinating that like everyone does have like similar experiences. There's a lot of overlap, but everyone is so stubborn, like in their own world, or maybe just like putting on a front as to like how mature they really are, that they just never really let anyone in. And maybe that's like on my interpretation because like I really dig characters, like trying to understand them, even if it is my own interpretation. But I guess regarding the plot and like your thoughts on that is definitely pretty understandable because for a lot of, I guess, like more narrow-minded sounds like too mean, but I guess like people who really adhere to watching stuff and just like check it off on a list and like skipping filler, even if it's like brings emotional moments. You could say like maybe only a fraction of Bebop's episodes like have that initial plot. And even then there's a lot of stuff that I wish were elaborated more, like say like Julia, for instance, and like her presence. But when that stuff does come into the forefront, like Jupiter Jazz, both of those episodes, I do appreciate them. I do appreciate the moments. A lot is just coming back into my head as I talk about this. But I think your assessment is definitely understandable. And I do hope that you watch more anime, honestly. I think if you do like Bebop, I know the director has made like almost everything else he's made, despite not being Bebop, are still very good. Space Dandy is my personal favorite. And yeah, I think it's 10 years old now, but a lot of people initially slept on it, I feel, because it's in Bebop's shadow. But if you like, it's vaguely similar, but if you're more a fan of comedy, like a lot of like experimental animation and, you know, just the nebulous like space disco theme with, you know, vaguely similar characters, I think you enjoy that as well. Shorter watch, 2 seasons. And yeah, like the director, Watanabe, is someone who is very much influenced by Western media. Over here, my worry is that the latest... So, and I've talked about this with friends. So, his latest work over here, an original production called Lazarus, is very much evoking like shades of Bebop, despite being its own thing. And for people who always wanted more Bebop, that might be great. But I can't help but feel that it reeks of, you know, fine, fuck it, I'll do it, instead of a genuine like creative wish. Like if Watanabe wants to do that, that's great. But again, knowing how much his last work, well, Space Dandy, no, I miss Carol and Tuesday. That's another good one on Netflix, Carol and Tuesday. But knowing how much people prefer that, I think trying to replicate that, even if it's on surface level, might not stick. But I do trust the director. I do trust the team. And I hope it's good. I just want it to not be strangled by, you know, the responsibility of being in Bebop's shadow. But Bebop absolutely is very important. And yeah, gonna be in your server again anyway. But I'd love to just, I guess, like follow your journey into more anime. And if you ever need any recommendations, feel free to let me know.
Yeah, I have a few in my mind that I think I would like and try and get to. Because yeah, I've always kind of been like, oh, I don't like anime, but there's always been a few where I'm like, oh, I'd probably like that, because like, you know, a lot of the stuff I like is Japanese anyway. It's not like in my room here, I've got a shelf of Sonic and Bayonetta and Devil May Cry and Metroid and all this stuff, and like all these Nintendo things. Like it's all Japanese. All the music I listen to is like Japanese jazz fusion, like T-Square and Dimension, like these bands that basically, for anyone who doesn't know, it's like if Mario Kart 8, the soundtrack of Mario Kart 8 was just a band. Like all their music is like that. So yeah, I'm not like against anime fully. It's just I need to find the ones that I actually like. But in terms of like other like animated stuff, really, I mean, the complete opposite would be that the thing I'm most probably looking forward to at this point is the Bluey movie, and I'm hoping I can.
Yeah, you were talking about that on Blue Sky.
Yeah, if I can work on that, because I'm in Brisbane, like I'm in the city Bluey is made and set in, and I've watched every episode, and I think it might be one of the best shows I've ever seen. And yeah, if I can work on that movie, that would be very cool. Although my girlfriend mentioned like, yeah, but then you're gonna get spoiled on the movie. You can't watch it as like an audience member anymore, sort of. And I was like, yeah, that is true, but it would be cool to work on. My only issue is 99.9% sure it's not going to be an Unreal Engine, because I know it's a CG movie. That's all they've said. It's a CG movie, so I'm assuming not 2D. But so I don't know what the likelihood is of getting hired to work on it when my skill set, even though it could easily be transferable over to Maya and whatever lighting thing they're using, I would probably get less. I'm probably less likely to be hired compared to someone else who's got 5 years in lighting in Maya compared to me 5 years of lighting in Unreal or whatever. So
right.
I'm a little unsure about that, but no, I genuinely do think like completely not joking. I know it's like a show that looks like it's just made for toddlers, but like Bluey is easily like one of the best shows ever made, and great for anyone of any age, I think.
No, I definitely agree. My partner has sang the praises of Bluey a lot. It has caught on so much over here in a way that I haven't expected. Like the Disney push over here probably helps a little bit. But the fact that it's just a good show inherently, like, I'm very happy. I'm very glad that kids can grow up on a show like that, which to me and like to many others would rival, I guess my own personal Bluey would be the Arthur show, which went on for almost as long as The Simpsons, I think, at like a point in time, which stands for its quality.
Yeah, I'm just so glad it is like an original thing, and like the fact that it is Australian and it's gotten so big overseas is like really cool as well, and just gives, because Australia doesn't get represented in anything, and like everything we see is all American and Canadian, British stuff. So it's cool that kind of for once we have, you know, something of our own a little bit, and it brings a bit more understanding of like, I guess, our culture, if you can call it that, to the rest of the world, because Americans are so in their little bubble of they only know about America and nothing else. So it's nice to have something a little different, and something new and original for kids to latch onto with its own voice. Although I would say Bluey to me, I think, does feel the most like a condensed all ages Simpsons to me. I think like it very much feels like those early Simpsons episodes, with the not so much the comedy focus, but the storytelling focus of like some of those old Simpsons episodes that were like genuinely really emotional and would make you cry. Like that's how Bluey feels to me, but just, you know, less adult and, you know, more for all ages.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. And like I can always respect shows that like, you know, like it's like a level of like self-love, and the fact that, you know, you are willing to like make your characters like feel like that, you know. Like even now we can still wax nostalgic over like episodes like Bart Gets an F, for instance. And if Bluey is able to like fill in, if Bluey can even be put in the same sentence as that, I think that alone like speaks for its quality.
It completely, like, even the more kind of trivial, mundane episodes that don't feel like they're really trying to get you, they still like, they get me a little bit sometimes. Right? I almost feel like choked up thinking about them. Like there's one there's one episode, I think it's called Daddy Drop Off, where it's like Bandit, the dad, dropping off Bluey and Bingo, the kids, to school, and Bingo wants Bandit to do this little thing where he pretends to like wind her up like a toy so she can go like run into class, and he's like, oh, like I'm running late, I gotta get Bluey to school, but he stops and does it anyway to help her, and then that makes her run into this other kid in the kindergarten, and then they meet and become friends. And it has like this, like right at the end of the episode, the other kid says like, and that's how I met Bingo, and like, and now we're like friends forever. And then it like rapid for like a second, it has like a photo of them together as kids, and then it cuts really quick to like them in like elementary school, and them in high school, and them in college, and like graduating together, like just bam bam bam, like really quick, and it just ends. And like it was like an, oh my god, like immediately, like, oh, like now I'm crying like straight away, like just like a jump scare of like really impactful emotion, like right at the end of the episode. That's like, I don't think that's like considered as much in like all the big like best episodes of Bluey ever, like Sleepy Time and Camping and Cricket and Baby Race and all that, but like that one still stands out to me as like a just like a really sincere, sweet little like ending of a very good story.
Very, very wonderful to hear. And no, I find it ironic that like, you know, once this is off, like you'll probably watch, you know, maybe like Space Dandy or whatever, and I'm gonna have to like binge a couple seasons of Bluey. I think.
Yeah, well,
I think the
anyone who thinks I'm like a cynical asshole or whatever, like because I say I don't like a Sonic game or whatever, like I love a show made for like toddlers or whatever. Like I think Bluey is fantastic.
Wonderful. And Caelum, I have kept you long enough, so I will wrap up. I just have like a lightning round of questions.
Sure.
From my partner. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. All the time.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, my partner Jay. Hi, honey. So one. Have you ever worked on paleo art, dino art for fun or for work? Have you done any of that?
Not like I've done, like I draw dinosaurs in my little sketchbook and stuff, and I've made a few models before when I was learning Z-brush or Z-brush a few years ago before I got a job. I did like the Jurassic Park raptors and the Compsognathus. So I wouldn't inherently call that paleo art because it's the Jurassic Park designs that it's not quite accurate or anything, because I know a lot of paleo artists, they go right down to like skeletal and like muscle anatomy of like they have to make sure every little feature they draw is like completely right, and I think that's awesome.
Right.
But I am not there at all. Like I know a lot about dinosaurs, and I'm always learning. Like I listen to a dinosaur podcast on my way to work all the time, and I'm reading dinosaur books, and I've got posters, like several posters on my wall and all this stuff. Like I do keep up, but I'm not that good. And just like and drawing in general, like I've always done drawing, but I've never like really, really, really like truly spent the time to get good at it. I would love to do more stuff, and as I've said, I am working on a dinosaur project at the moment, but I would not I would not call it paleo art. It is not remotely focused on paleontology research or accurate dinosaurs at all. But even right now on my desk, like I've got on one side I've got two like Jurassic like dinosaur toys. I've got a whole other they're only on my desk because there's no room in my shelf in the living room because it's full of other dinosaur toys. And on the other side I've got like some accurate ones that I bought as well.
Nice.
So yeah, I love the Jurassic Park designs, but I am also like, come on, I want feathers, I want T-Rexes with lips, I want like all of these more up-to-date things represented in the world.
Absolutely. Okay, so second question. The first part, I already know that your favorite Sonic game is 3 Knuckles, right?
Yeah, although Mania is extremely close. The more time goes on, the more I think Mania is the better game. But it's just a lack of originality, really. If Mania was all Studiopolis, Mirage Saloon, Press Garden, like original stuff, I think that would easily be my favorite Sonic game for sure.
I agree. Is there anything about 3 Knuckles or Mania that like inspired you, or do you just like love them?
I love the art direction, particularly more in Mania, I think, because 3 Knuckles is definitely sliding the classic aesthetic more towards kind of what you'd see in Sonic Adventure, like a little bit more of like a realistic kind of, you look at like Ice Cap and like Angel Island, they're nowhere near as like surreal and weird as like Sonic 1 and CD. And I think I prefer that more wacky kind of, not whack. Like I want Sonic Worlds to feel naturalistic, but also very strange and cartoony and crazy. Yeah, and I think Mania hits that really well. Like, Press Garden and Studiopolis and stuff, and Mirage Saloon have that eye-catching like Sonic look, like a very good blend between the craziness of like Sonic CD to then the more like natural, semi-realistic like 3 Knuckles, so like a kind of middle ground between those. And like the music and everything, and just for me, I think what makes Three and Knuckles so good is just that commitment to being an overall package, where like maybe in some ways the individual levels aren't quite as good as some of the best of like what you'd see in Sonic Mania, but it feels like a complete game that I can play from beginning to end, and have a consistently good time. And I just always loved the way Sonic moves. I love the rolling in a ball, going downhill, gaining speed. I jump off a slope to reach up somewhere higher that I'm not supposed to be able to get to necessarily. Bouncing off enemies, and like there's always that bit in Angel Island, like right before the boss, where you like go up the ramp, you jump into the tree to get the flame shield, and then like bounce off the box, and then flame shield dash like back to the platform. Like cool stuff like that. Like I miss when Sonic had fun movement mechanics, because to me, all of my other favorite games are all about either cool movement or cool combat. Like Shady Knight was my favorite game of 2024 because it's a like movement parkour combat game where you're like bouncing off walls and off enemies and like fighting them and doing all like combining moves in clever ways. And that's what I want out of Sonic again. Like I want a 3D Sonic game where I'm running off walls and bouncing off the floor, and when I bounce off the floor, like my momentum redirects in a fun way, and like I can bounce off an enemy and chain that into another enemy and like get creative. That's what I really want. And yeah, like obviously Three and Knuckles, like it's a 2D game. It's kind of hard to do that in the same way. That's my other thing with like classic Sonic is like, I think classic Sonic's fundamentals would work better in 3D than in 2D, because you have so much more room to make this kind of playground level design than you can in 2D. And you can get away with more complicated actions. So yeah, but yeah, Three and Knuckles and Mania definitely still, my favorites.
Okay. And I guess final question, you already said like your background in 3D. But I guess if you could like quickly say like why you work mostly in 3D, or like what do you like about working in 3D?
I think because I did like film in high school, and I loved my film class. Like I had a really good teacher. I learned so much. Like that's when I really understood like media analysis properly through like film and like English class as well. But the actual process of making stuff kind of pissed me off sometimes, like the like location scouting and like signing of like agreements of like, can we film here at this time of day, and all that planning and the strictness of the schedule and having to coordinate everyone. Or I just thought like, I can just do this in a computer, and then I don't have to like deal with all of that. And that's not me like putting down film. It's just an area that I have a huge respect for it. But it's just the area I don't feel as comfortable working in. So I think 3D was like my analog to kind of do that. And I as a kid, I would do like stop motion stuff with like Lego and with clay and like little Sonic toys, until eventually trying out Source Filmmaker, or like Gary's Mod, and then Source Filmmaker, and moving stuff around and learning how to animate. And then, like eventually studying animation, and most of the degree was 3D stuff. I think like I love 2D animation. I'm just not quite as good at drawing compared to what I can do in 3D, I guess. Like, I think that's really it. But I also like the cool stuff you can do with 3D of just building a world and shining a light through it in different ways, and you get cool, interesting results with like the same geometry, but you just move the light around and it can feel so different. I find that really quite cool. And just like navigating 3D spaces is inherently kind of interesting. That's why I need to mention this at some point in this podcast. Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Sonic Mania may be like my favorite Sonic games, but Outer Wilds is the best game ever made. My favorite game
I
of
knew
all
it was
time.
coming.
And that's a game all about just like traversing 3D spaces and figuring out how things work and problem solving and learning and reading, and I've gone on in like most videos I've made since playing that game, but anyone who has not heard of Outer Wilds, go buy it right now, but don't read anything about it on the store page. Just play it.
Okay.
Best game ever made. I don't think there'll ever be a game I love as much as that. No,
Okay, perfect.
Best game ever.
So-
I'm reading the art book at the moment.
Oh, wow. So, yeah. I would just say, Caelum, you have been a great guest. It's been really nice to just like pick your brain both about like just the professional stuff and 3D animation. No, but for real, you've been great. It's been really interesting, just picking apart your brain, for lack of better expression. And regardless of like what endeavors you go on, professionally or otherwise, consider me a fan. I really respect your stuff, and I hope you keep doing great stuff.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you for having me on your show.
You're welcome. So, where can our listeners find you?
So I go by the screen name Telekinesticman, basically everywhere, not Telekinetic Man, because that would make sense, but I made this username a very, very, very long time ago, and I think it was at the time, it was like a little comic I was doing where the characters were stick figures, and I don't think I realized the pun, telekinestic man, like a stick man.
Right.
Like, I don't think I actually realized that, but yes. At telekinestic man, basically anything. I'm on Twitter, but I don't use it anymore, but like
Right.
Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, of course. I have my YouTube channel. I am on Tumblr, but I don't really use it much, but those are the main ones. Yeah, Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube, of course. Where I talk about video games and sometimes movies as well. When I get the time to, I stream sometimes as well. But yeah, I don't do videos super often because they take months to make in between working full time on other things.
Completely. Like, hey, I know how that is. I've had an idea, my current video. I've had the idea for like many years, and like I'm in the B-roll process. So hey, it is what it is.
Time consuming.
Definitely, but very rewarding once it finally comes in.
Yes.
For me, my socials nowadays, you should be able to find me as A2 Adam. Basically, Blue Sky. And of course, I have my own domain. AdamLature.com, LAUTURE.com. I'm getting back into releasing these podcasts, so there's no financial way to support these, but I'll try to do these one a month just so I can have like a little bit of a backlog. I really want to get back into producing these. And any more information, you'll hear the end roll or maybe in the description. And again, just thank you for listening to this very, very extensive podcast I've had with Caelum. I have been Adam.
And I am Caelum, also Telekinestic Man.
And we will both catch you next time. Remember to stay safe, take care, wear a mask, and remember, love and peace always. Take care.
Thank you.